Morning everyone, it's Joe Waxman and I'm back with another video. I'm going to do a mini reading of Jerry Garcia, lead guitarist and singer of the Grateful Dead. He had a very long career musically and was an outstanding and inspiring guitar player, known for his technical ability and his improvisational ability. Okay. I love the Grateful Dead. I think they're a fantastic group of musicians. And of course, it's not just Jerry Garcia, it's all of them. But he was one of the main, people often considered him the leader of the Grateful Dead, even though I don't think he liked to call himself that. He was one of the founding members. And I think he was the one who found the name for the Grateful Dead. And it's interesting. I just thought this was so interesting. I mean, this is from Wikipedia. Not that I like Wikipedia very much, but it does have some good information. Let's see. So the definition for Grateful Dead was a dead person or his angel showing gratitude to someone who, as an act of charity, arranged their burial. And nobody liked that name, but it stuck with them. So I thought that was interesting. So that's what Grateful Dead means. A dead person or his angel who's grateful for the act of burial. Interesting. Sort of dark, macabre theme, but it has some levity at the same time. Some, a grateful dead person. It's kind of an interesting twist of ideas, words. So you had a Sun in Leo, conjunct Mercury and Pluto. Wider conjunct Chiron. It's not as influential. So Sun in Leo. I mean, Sun is the ruler of Leo, so it's perfectly at home. And in the 10th house, very powerful combination for fame, success. No matter what he did, Jerry Garcia, he would have been a success because Sun in Leo in the 10th house is just a sign of fame. I mean, that's really all you need to know. That's not all we need to know, but that says a huge amount, right? Sun is ruling the 11th house cusp, but falls in the 10th house. So that's great. I mean, being part of, having the 11th house influence because it's 11th house cusp. So like groups, networks. So like Grateful Dead as a band, a group falls into that. Falls into the whole notion of a clique, like, being representative of a certain group with boundaries. So like the rock, the hippie rock kind of, going to a Grateful Dead show. They were their own genre. I mean, the Grateful Dead really defined themselves. I mean, what kind of music were they? They were the Grateful Dead kind of music. They were rock and roll, but they were like very much, the whole drug hippie, go to Grateful Dead show, get high, follow them around, stuff like that. But they were great musicians in their own right. I mean, they didn't just create that genre for no good reason. Fantastic musicians, all of them, including Jerry Garcia, one of the greatest guitar players of all time, considered by many. So yeah, that's Sun in the 11th house. Conjunct Mercury. Mercury's skills of the hands, right? Guitar playing, and he played other instruments too. Fantastic. Mercury's ruling the 9th house and the 12th house cusp. 12th house cusp of creativity. 9th of religion and philosophy. So I mean, Jerry Garcia was a thinker and a philosopher, no doubt. I don't know much about that, but he was high-minded, and I think that comes through in a lot of his music. A sort of, there's a spiritual, I don't know if spiritual, but like definitely philosophical theme to a lot of the Grateful Dead songs and lyrics. I'm sure they had I know Jerry Garcia wrote some of the lyrics, but some of the other ones did too, so it depends who wrote them. But Anyway, he's bringing a lot of creativity and philosophy into his art, to his craft, to his music. And Pluto, let's not forget Pluto, ruling the second house, so wealth. And Pluto conjunct the sun. Well, it's very and Mercury is very psychological, deeply psychological. Pluto rules death, so I mean, it's no wonder he was, chose the name Grateful Dead. I think before then there were the Warlocks, but another band named were also named the Warlocks, so they changed it. But yeah, so Pluto's filling his mind with dark ideas, right? Death, themes of death, and just so you know, like Pluto, ninth house Scorpio influence, or eighth house Scorpio influence, will have those themes where you're thinking about death and dark things a lot, and it doesn't make somebody a dark person. Yes, I mean, okay, in a sense it does, but not like morally, not like wrongdoing or anything like that. Just because he's has these dark thoughts and thinking about death does not in any way mean that he's a morally corrupt person, that he's into doing horrible, evil things to people. Not at all. Quite the opposite a lot of times, because there's an empathy and understanding of what death means, of what pain and suffering means with Pluto, because Pluto attracts that kind of thing. So his sun, his Mercury, his mind, his intelligence, his whole being is being surrounded by this Plutonic theme of death, crisis, rebirth. His father died young, and that's very emblematic of this. Pluto conjunct the sun. Pluto represents death and rebirth, so that's very telling, and it gives a lot of meaning to the idea of Grateful Dead, at least the dead part, right? Why is he so into death? Like, why do you think about like naming his band the Grateful Dead, and why do a lot of sometimes their songs had very dark themes to them as well? And we know he had a drug addiction, cocaine and heroin, and probably loads of marijuana and alcohol and cigarettes and all that. That's very Plutonic as well. Pluto has a fatalistic kind of approach to life where they can really get into some hairy, dark things, drugs, sex, alcohol, things like that, dangerous type stuff. Ultimately, the goal of Pluto is evolution of the soul. But it goes to such extremes to get there. So it's really nothing is beyond its limits, like when Pluto's influencing the sun. This can also make great depth perception, like great psychological awareness. Psychologists, occultists, astrologers can have Pluto next to the sun. Great researchers as well. So like if it's more in the field of like science, they can really dig deep. Or like anything where you're like trying to, discover hidden things beneath the earth, like oil or gemstones. Any sort of that secret, hidden underground stuff. Pluto conjunct Mercury, conjunct the sun. That's all very prominent, and it also adds a lot of power. Pluto is power and dominance, and like it creates through a lot of pain and challenge and difficulty this tremendous force of power. That's probably why a lot of people thought of him as the leader, even though he did not claim to be the leader. He just had natural leadership aura, especially with Sun in Mercury. Sun and Mercury in Leo, and Pluto in Leo conjunct the Sun and Mercury. That's making him very powerful, making his presence very powerful, right? In the 10th house, extremely powerful person. Okay. Moon in Aries. It's falling in the 6th quadrant, but it's so close to the descendant that I would say this is very much a 7th house moon in Aries. Moon in the 7th house is fantastic because it can really relate to people, because 7th house is the house of others and moon is our heart, it's our emotions. So here his emotions, his heart, his inner heart is going out to people, to others, and he can convey that. It's very touching, right? Like when you feel somebody's heart, it moves your heart. So here he's able to move other people's heart. And Aries is so inspiring. It's fantastic for really grabbing people's awareness, grabbing their attention, inspiring them, motivating them. Like he's singing, he's on the guitar, and he's moving people. Like people are moved, they're touched, they're dancing. That's why it's like the live shows were so great with Jerry Garcia because, well, okay, I've been to the Grateful Dead parking lot, but it was a little before my time, and I was not like a Grateful Dead groupie, like, after the fact. They were, in the 90s, it wasn't really, they were still doing their alive and doing their thing, but it wasn't really in its time. Let's say it was just a remnant from the past at that point. Anyway, enough about me. This is really good. It's not, Moon in Aries is fine, but being in the 7th house, Moon is great, and then the Aries lends a lot of inspiration to move people, capture their attention, inspire them, things like that. Now this is really prominent here. Oh, by the way, Moon is ruling the 10th house cusp. That's also great. 10th house and 7th house, very fame giving. Jupiter is exactly conjunct Venus. These are the two great benefics. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and Venus is fine, but Venus is being lifted up by Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruling the 3rd house of communication, writing, speaking, and skills of the hands, guitar playing, right? Banjo. He played I don't know how many instruments he played. I know he played those two. So this is excellent, excellent, excellent. In the 9th house of, philosophy, higher awareness, religion, but it's just so high in the sky that it's like very prominent. It's very, very visible. Like he can really, this is the 9th house is the house of God, higher education. So he's taking his guitar skills, which is ruled by Jupiter in itself, which is at home in the 9th house, its original house, exalted in the 9th house, together with Venus, which is tremendous levity, by the way. It's tremendous abundance. Jupiter and Venus together, they both rule like wealth and prosperity and benefic, all the benefic things in life, all the good things in life, abundance, wisdom, material wealth, overindulgence. Really, when these two come together, it's like too much of a good thing in essence, and that's probably why he was always into overindulging in drugs. But this is the house of God, so he's like taking his guitar skills up to the house of God, right? I mean, it's incredibly like powerful combination. Like you hear him, and you like when he's improvising and when he's just playing, it's really, really, really wonderful. That's this. Jupiter's also ruling the 5th house cusp. The 5th house cusp is the house of creativity. This is the house of creativity along with the 12th house. 3rd house is the house of skills and communication. 2nd house is the house of voice. So yeah, this is super, super prominent. And 10th house cusp is in Cancer as well. And Venus is ruling the 8th house and the 1st house. So he himself is being lifted up by the exalted Jupiter because he's Venus. Venus is this ascendant ruler, ascendant lord, and it's tightly conjunct Jupiter. This is also great for levity, great for having a good sense of humor and joy and exuberance and positivity. Like he was just a jolly guy, like a happy guy. He was a good-natured guy because of this. This brings a lot of like just positivity, tremendous positivity into his life. And luck. 8th house. Okay, so let's bring in the 8th house. So there can be like a bit of darkness there as well because Venus is ruling the 8th house cusp. Once in a while things might, he might have periodic accidents or downtime or like suffer or something like that. And he did get sick, by the way. I said Jupiter's ruling the 5th house cusp. That's actually 6th house. I'm sorry, it's still morning. I'm not fully awake. 6th house is not the best house. That's the house of conflict and so there's two bad houses being ruled here, the 8th and the 6th, but they are coming together, and that's positive. And Jupiter's exalted, so not bad, but there's potential conflict and accidents and downtime and pain and suffering, things like that. He was a good singer, but he was not like known for being, his voice was not really the thing, and that's ruled by Mars and Pluto. So it's still prominent, but it's not like, the strength of his chart. Pluto does well in Leo, and Mars does well in Virgo. Mars is conjunct the nodes, the North Node. So that's really making his Mars prominent. So he could sing for sure, but it's not his most powerful aspect. His South Node is in the 5th house in Pisces, and that's really powerful. That's really strong for creativity, for the arts in general. And Neptune, the co-ruler, Neptune, the co-ruler of Pisces, along with Jupiter, is in the 12th house of creativity. That's really excellent. It's in Virgo, so Virgo again helps with sort of being critical and editorial about all the creative aspects, being like just having a really good sensibility about what works, what doesn't work, things like that. The art critic. Virgo is the art critic. Right? North Node and Mars in Virgo would also have that as well. And every artist needs to be able to criticize their own work, or at least it helps a whole lot. Let's see. So this is a really interesting combination. Saturn conjunct Uranus in Gemini in the 8th house. So one of the things was that Jerry Garcia was known for was his ability to improvise. And that's not just improvise a little, improvise a lot for a long period, play guitar just like on improvisation for a really long time, like an hour or something, or like per song, or what I mean, long time. And that's Uranus and Gemini, because Gemini rules the skills of the hand. So here we're talking about guitar skills. Uranus is improvisation, because it's like now. Uranus does not reference the past. It's all about this moment, right? It's just new. Like just completely in the moment. And Saturn lengthens whatever it touches. So here we're having Saturn and Uranus lengthening the improv, lengthening the newness, lengthening the awareness, right, in the guitar skills. So that's in the 8th house. 8th house will deal with deep hidden things. So like, it's not just making him able to improvise for a long period of time. He's able to really dig deep and like improvise in a very powerful, deep, authentic way, right? His music was good. They didn't become one of the greatest American bands of all time for no reason. Jerry Garcia was one of the main reasons, because he was a great guitar player, great singer-songwriter, and he could improvise on the guitar like nobody's business. And that's very prominent here. Also, it's square the nodes, especially Uranus. That is very prominent. That indicates Uranus square the nodes indicate accidents, especially in the 8th house. Accidents, difficulties, and I'm not a authority on Jerry Garcia's life, but I'm sure periodically there were accidents. Saturn actually restricts that, so without Saturn, it'd probably be worse. But Saturn in the 8th house creates a long life. So this is not like deadly accidents, but there are accidents that are going to happen. Accidents and mishaps and things like that are kind of somewhat destined, because square the nodes rules a kind of destiny. So certain things can happen in his life, either to him or around him, that are like accidental and tragic at the same time. I know his father died. I don't know who else died. Probably other people died. Drugs and alcohol and things like that. Drug overdose were, in the 60s and 70s, that was common enough. So, I'm sure that, and he himself, I know that wasn't in great shape. He had diabetes, and he was addicted to heroin and did a lot of cocaine and who knows what else. Which is very much about Pluto conjunct Mercury and the Sun, and also this Jupiter conjunct Venus in Cancer is just like extreme indulgence, pretty much. Yeah. And what else? Mars conjunct the nodes would make him very driven, um, you know, through the second half of his life, 42. And he was, I mean, he did do a lot of work after that, kept making music, kept singing, playing songs, a bunch of different people. And the Grateful Dead kept, doing shows and all that, which is good. Like, not all artists have it in them to keep going after a certain point. They just sort of fizzle out. Not Jerry Garcia. He just kept going and going and going until he died. That is the bulk of it. All his planets really are on the top half that shows a very public persona, somebody who's very visible in public life, and he was from an early age. Neptune in the 12th, like I said, excellent for creativity and for spirituality as well, for imagination, for connecting with spiritual. I think Jerry Garcia had a spiritual side. It was probably covered up with too much drugs, right? He was just a rock star, but like without that, if he could have gotten sober, he would have had a really, really nice evolved spirituality that he could have tapped into, especially with Jupiter and Cancer. His in the ninth house, a lot of wisdom as well. Venus probably makes it a bit more materialistic, a bit more indulgent, honestly, and that's probably why he was more drawn to drugs than spirituality and wisdom. But still, I'm sure Jerry Garcia was a wise man in his own way. So much success can sort of corrupt a person. I don't think he was that corrupt, but like at least with the drugs, he became corrupted. And it's difficult to access the higher spirituality when you have that much material success in life. But nonetheless, amazing musician, great guy, I think. I don't know him personally, but he seems like a great guy. I like him. Anyway, that's Jerry Garcia. Tremendously powerful chart. You can really see it. I mean, it reminds me a bit of like Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page, things like that, with the exalted Jupiter or Jupiter combinations. They all three have that, strong Jupiters. Anyway, that's about it. So if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and go to my website, macroastrology.com, for a reading. And that's it for today. Thanks, guys. Okay, bye.